Welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I'm your host, Roddy John, and today we talk to Brent with Spirit of Wasatch. We talk all about his background in the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, opening a distillery in Salt Lake City, and so much more. That was a mouthful, I know, but this is a great conversation, and I can't wait to head up to the Salt Lake City area to try this spirits out myself. They make gin, they make vodka, they make bourbon, they do it all. They're doing fantastic things up there, and you'll hear more about them in a second. But first, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. It comes out twice a week. You get even more information about our guest. You get fun facts, and you get to find out what's happening with your favorite podcast, all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. So without further ado, here is Brent with the Spirit of Wasatch. I would like to welcome to the show Brent with the Spirit of Wasatch. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great.
So for those listening, kind of paint us a word picture. Where are you at? What's going on around you?
We're in the Salt Lake Valley. So right here in Salt Lake City, in the between the Wasatch Mountains and the Ochre Mountains.
Nice. Now, you are in the Salt Lake City area, and I know somebody from the North Texas area has moved up there, so I have to ask, have you had a Post Malone sighting?
I have not.
Okay. It seems silly, but I'm just putting it out in the universe enough. If I ask enough about him, then he will, he'll come on the show.
Right. Right. Yep.
Well, so let's go all the way back in time. What is your earliest memory of alcohol?
Oh, boy. I did not really start drinking until I was 21. So I followed the rules and obeyed the laws. But yeah, really my first memory is probably Mai Tais in Hawaii. Because right around my 21st birthday, we flew out to Hawaii for my cousin's wedding. So
that sounds awesome.
My first horrible memory of alcohol was probably fajitas and margaritas in college, but that was that was a mistake.
How so?
Oh, well, the margarita mix and the tequila came in the same size bottle, which to us implied a 1-to-1 mix, which was a very early night.
Yeah, and a not so great morning.
No, yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, especially if you're not used to it. Tequila in the morning cannot be a very good afterword.
No, yes.
Now, I read that you were a member of the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. You were making nautical charts in Alaska and the New York, New Jersey area. How did you get into that? And then for those, obviously, like myself, that don't know, what does that job entail?
Directly out of college, I joined the NOAA Corps, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Corps of Commissioned Officers. It is the smallest of the uniformed services, but it has the longest name. So there are about 320 commissioned officers, and they operate NOAA's fleet of ships and aircraft. And I got my degree in mechanical engineering, and they were at our job fair, and their job offer sounded a lot more exciting than sitting in a cubicle somewhere doing finite element analysis. So
this is true.
I ended up doing basic training at the Kings Point Merchant Marine Academy. Now they do it at the Coast Guard Academy, but we kind of learned ship driving through a fire hose, and then off to my first sea assignment up in Alaska, and sailed around there on the NOAA ship Rainier, making nautical charts, and had a great time with it. Spent a little over a decade working for NOAA.
Wow.
And most of it was spent with the Office of Coast Survey. So the Coast Survey was founded back in 1807 by Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, wow.
As the survey of the coast, basically make nautical charts to promote safe navigation and commerce in U.S. waters. It was supposed to take like 10 years, and the agency is still around, and it seems like it's a continuous job to maintain the nautical charts. So Yeah.
Jeez. So, so I imagine so I had a friend who was on a submarine and he has very wild stories about, because it's a 24-hour process, you have 12 on, 12 off. Where were you were you on land? Were you on sea? Was it kind of a mix or how did that work?
So NOAA Corps officers do kind of rotations or billets. They get shifted around
Okay.
quite a bit. So I started out with a 2-year sea assignment. Um, and the officers are deck watch standers. So I did a 4 on, 8 off schedule. So 4 hours on the bridge, driving the ship, and then 8 hours off. I was on a hydrographic ship, so the officers were kind of also intimately involved in the hydrographic survey operation. So I got to run surveys and do a lot of the survey work there in those off hours. And then, yeah, I kind of transferred from there and then spent about 4 years at the PMEL engineering division, doing mechanical engineering, ocean engineering on deep ocean data buoys. So the one of the main arrays we worked on was the Tau array, which did El Nino, La Nina. That array kind of discovered that phenomenon.
Oh.
Was developed at PMEL, and then we of course worked on the deep ocean assessment and reporting of tsunamis, which makes the acronym DART as long as you ignore the ocean. but they like the acronym, so we went with it. Yeah, so did a lot on the tsunami buoys in those 4 years. A lot of fun, and then went back out as an operations officer for 2 years on the ship. Drove the ship and kind of managed the overall ship survey operations. And then I finished out my career as the navigation manager in the Northeast. So I jokingly said I was a professional meeting attender because I got to basically run up and down from New Jersey all the way up to Maine and attend port operations group meetings and make sure that our navigation products and services were meeting the needs of our port partners in all of those ports.
I mean, that coastline is absolutely beautiful up there. I haven't been to Maine, but I've seen so many pictures, and my parents went up there, and they say it's absolutely beautiful up there.
It is. I spent a majority of my sea time up in Alaska, and I was struck by how similar Maine was to the Alaskan kind of steep and deep topography and the beauty up there. So yeah.
So how did you end up in the spirits world?
Well, a series of bad decisions, probably. But I kind of got interested in whiskey several years ago. I had a friend in college that was pretty much always interested in whiskey, and he drugged me along with him. And as I got interested in whiskey, I kind of started. I'm engineering background. I hate a black box. I like to know how things work and how things are made. So I started looking into distilling and the distillation process. Watched a lot of YouTube, a lot of good videos on there about distillation, and we ended up moving to Utah for my wife's work.
Okay.
And there's not really a lot of ocean in Utah, so I was kind of stay-at-home dad for quite a while. And as I got interested in distilling, my wife and I started kind of toying with the idea of opening a distillery and started working towards maybe doing that. I thought we'd maybe retire in a few years and then move on to a small distillery. But my wife gets business listings sent to her fairly regularly, and this distillery, which was formerly Hammer Spring Distillers, came up for sale, and the price seemed very reasonable. And we met the owners and kind of walked through it and realized that buying an existing distillery removed a lot of the hurdles that you'd have to go through to start a distillery from scratch, and ended up making an offer and then going through the whole licensing process, and closed on it about a year ago. And I found myself running a distillery a lot sooner than I had anticipated. But yeah.
I mean, that's so true, because I have heard the story so many times that people will obviously, buy the spot, then they have to renovate the entire place, which means they got to put drains in, and then getting all the equipment, and then making sure that everything's, working properly and everything. So you just kind of not inherited it, but you bought the entire thing. And so you not lucked out, but really worked out better in your side than most people's.
Yes. And we ended up purchasing it for probably not much more than what the equipment and inventory really cost. And particularly and it's not necessarily how I would have built out the distillery, but it's functional, and I made a few modifications here and there. But the biggest thing is, particularly in Utah, to apply for the federal license, you have to have all the equipment and have the building in place. And then that approval process can take up to a year.
Jeez.
And then you can't apply. In Utah, you have to apply for a state license, which includes a site survey, but they won't do any of that until you have your federal license in hand. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for your federal license, if a school opened up next door or a church went in down the street, you might get automatically rejected by the Utah DABS right after you get your federal permit. So it's having this site that's already approved is pretty big. So yeah.
So what is your background when it comes to distilling and everything? Because I mean, you said you were hoping maybe do this when you retire or whatever, but then the great opportunities kind of landed in your lap. What is your background when it comes to distilling?
Well, watching lots of YouTube videos. I've got a lot of a sticker that says certified YouTube expert, so that should qualify me.
Yes.
But I did several training courses, particularly through Moonshine University.
Okay.
There in Louisville. And then there's some other programs and professional trainings that I attended. The 6-day distiller course if anyone's ever considering becoming a distiller and opening a distillery, the 6-day distiller course at Moonshine University is a pretty good course. A lot of useful information there. They kind of spend at least half the time trying to talk you out of opening a distillery. So. Yeah.
Well, so when it does come to Salt Lake City, I know from talking to so many different people that the whole city and the state is getting so much, I guess, not the cooler is not the word, but more up to date as to what's happening, because so many people have their mindset that it's just Mormon country. There's no caffeine, no alcohol. It's like the town at Footloose. There's no dancing or anything. But we're seeing obviously that there are more things happening in Salt Lake City, and that the city is getting, far more up to date. And I guess the word is cooler to some people. What was it like obviously you bought a already working distillery in Salt Lake City. What is the town and the city kind of been like when it came to supporting you and really kind of showing how the community comes together?
Yeah, I can't speak for much more than a year ago, but I can say that in the past year, I've had really good interactions with the state DABS, and the city hasn't been any problem either. Utah, the first distillery in Utah was High West after Prohibition. So High West was the first back in 2006. And when the previous owner started this distillery, it was the 14th in the state.
Jeez.
Back in about 2016. And right now, I can name about 21 active distilleries, but